Greetings in the most holy name of our God. Today's reading is from Genesis 35 to 37. Genesis 35, God instructs Jacob to go to Bethel and settle there, reminding him of his earlier encounter with God. Jacob calls his household to put away foreign gods and purify themselves before going. He builds an altar at Bethel, and God appears to him again, reaffirming the covenant and renaming him Israel. God promises the nations and kings will come from him and confirms the land promise. Rachel dies while giving birth to Benjamin, bringing both sorrow and continuation to the family line. The chapter also records the death of Isaac, marking the end of a generation. This chapter emphasizes renewal, holiness, and return to God. Jacob's call to remove idols shows the need for inner cleansing before encountering God. God's reaffirmation of his promise reminds us that his covenant is unchanging. Even in moments of loss like Rachel's death, God's purpose continues. Bethel becomes a place of recommitment and restoration. It teaches that spiritual renewal often requires leaving behind old attachments. In today's life, believers are often called to return to God after drifting away. This chapter encourages us to remove anything that takes God's place in our hearts. True worship requires purity and intentional commitment. Even in seasons of loss and grief, God's plan continues in our lives. We must recreate Bethel moments when we reconnect with God deeply. Renewal brings clarity and direction for the future. Genesis 36 lists the descendants of Esau, known as Edom. It details his wives, sons, and the chiefs that came from his lineage. Esau settles in the hill country of Seir, separate from Jacob. The chapter also records the kings who ruled Edom before any king ruled over Israel. It shows the growth and establishment of Esau's family as a great nation. The genealogy highlights the fulfillment of God's promise to make Esau into a great people. Though often overlooked, this chapter shows the God's faithfulness to all his promises, even to Esau. It reminds us that God's blessings extend beyond the chosen line of Jacob. The detailed genealogy reflects God's order and purpose in history. It also shows that earthly success and growth are not always indicators of spiritual inheritance. God's plan includes both physical and spiritual dimensions. Every life and lineage matters in God's plan. In today's life, people often measure success by external achievements and growth. This chapter reminds us that God blesses people in different ways. Not all blessings are spiritual, and not all success reflects closeness to God. It encourages us to trust God's unique plan for our lives without comparison. Every individual has a role in God's broader purpose. Faithfulness is more important than outward success. In Genesis 37 introduces Joseph, Jacob's beloved son, who is given a special coat, causing jealousy among his brothers. Joseph's shares dream suggests that he will rule over his family, which increases their hatred. One day, when Joseph visits his brother in the field, they conspire against him. Instead of killing him, they sell him to traders who take him to Egypt. They deceive Jacob by showing Joseph's blood-stained coat, making him believe that Joseph is dead. This chapter ends with Joseph being sold into slavery. This chapter shows how God's plan can unfold even through rejection and suffering. Joseph's dream represents God's purpose, but the path to fulfillment involves hardship. Jealousy and hatred reveals the destructive nature of sin within relationships. Yet, God remains sovereign even when circumstances seem unjust. What others intended for harm, God uses for good. It teaches patience and trust in God's unseen work. In today's life, people may face rejection, betrayal, or misunderstanding like Joseph. The chapter reminds us that God's purpose for our lives is not hindered by difficulties. We must remain faithful even when life seems unfair. Envy and comparison can destroy your relationships and must be avoided. God is working behind the scenes even in painful situations. Trusting God's plan brings hope in uncertain times. Am I willing to remove distractions and return to God for spiritual renewal? Do I trust God's plan even when life includes loss, delay, or injustice? May God bless everyone. Amen.